Watching my husband pop a bottle of vintage champagne with his 24-year-old intern on our kitchen security feed was gut-wrenching enough, but realizing they were celebrating my funeral, which he had meticulously planned while I was still very much alive, was the moment my shock calcified into cold, calculated rage. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a ghost with a vendetta and a front-row seat to my own demise. It turns out that reading your own obituary with your morning coffee is a pretty effective appetite suppressant. There I was, sitting in my sister Chloe's kitchen in Stowe, Vermont, scrolling through the Westchester Chronicle on my iPad like it was any other Tuesday, when I almost choked on my avocado toast. According to page 6, Mallory Keaton, that's me, had died tragically and unexpectedly over the weekend. I blinked 3 times, wondering if the organic Vermont coffee had hallucinogenic properties I wasn't aware of. The obituary was surprisingly eloquent for someone who hadn't even bothered to text me to tell me I was dead. My loving husband, Preston, was apparently devastated by the sudden loss, but was finding strength in the support of the community. The photo they used was from our trip to Napa 5 years and 15 pounds ago. At least my fictional death looked good. "Chloe!" I screamed, nearly knocking over my sister's rustic chic bar stool. "Preston killed me!" My sister ran in from her yoga room, still half in a downward dog posture. "What the hell are you talking about?" I shoved the iPad into her hands. "Apparently, I've passed away. Very tragic. People are probably bringing casseroles to the house as we speak." Chloe's eyes went wide as dinner plates as she read the article. "Holy crap, Mal, this is detailed." And it certainly was thorough. Mallory Mal Keaton, 38, beloved director of Hudson Valley Living magazine, devoted wife of Preston Keaton, passionate advocate for local businesses, and a failed plant mom. Okay, they didn't include that last part, but everything else was accurate. The celebration of life was scheduled for Saturday at the Riverside Community Center. How considerate of my husband to plan my funeral while I was still using my lungs. "We should call the paper or the police," Chloe asked, already reaching for her phone. "Wait," I said, suddenly remembering something that chilled my blood faster than my now-forgotten oat milk latte. "Our life insurance. The one Preston insisted we upgrade last month. It went into effect just yesterday." "The one for $1.5 million?" I finished the sentence feeling like I was in one of those twisted Lifetime movies where the husband is both the villain and incredibly bad at being a villain. And his little intern, Haley, started bringing him lunch every day last month. Homemade lunch. Who makes homemade lunch for their boss? Serial killers and homewreckers. That's who. I grabbed my phone to check the home security app. The one Preston always complained was an unnecessary invasion of privacy. There they were, in our kitchen, drinking champagne. My champagne. The bottle I had been saving for my promotion announcement. "Is that—" "They're celebrating!" Chloe gasped, peering over my shoulder. They absolutely were. Preston was uncorking the bottle while Haley, with her perfect Gen Z skin and severe middle part, was arranging cheese on my host and home serving board. In my house, with my husband allegedly in mourning, while I was supposed to be decomposing somewhere. "Turn up the volume," Chloe whispered unnecessarily. We were both already leaning into the phone like it was about to reveal the meaning of life. "We just have to wait for the insurance verification," Preston was saying, his words slightly slurred. "Warren Griffin from Regional Life called today. Standard procedure," he said. "How long will that take?" Haley asked, sliding her hand along my granite countertop in a way that suggested she was already mentally redecorating. "A week? Maybe less. Then we're golden, babe. New start, new life." Apparently, I had traded mine in without even getting the receipt. It's a strange thing, realizing your entire existence has been erased by a few column inches of newsprint and a greedy spouse, but in that moment, the betrayal clarified everything. That was when an idea hit me with the force of a suburban mom spotting a clearance sale at Target. I wasn't going to call the police, not yet. I wasn't going to storm the house and confront them. No, I was going to stay dead for now. "Chloe," I said slowly, as a plan that would make the most convoluted episode of Real Housewives look like child's play formed in my mind. "I need your laptop and maybe your black dress." "The funeral one? Exactly." I smiled, feeling a surge of something between rage and euphoria. If Preston wants to mourn me so badly, I'll give him something to really cry about. I spent the next hour making 3 calls. One to my boss, explaining I needed a week of emergency remote work. Family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie. One to Warren Griffin at Regional Life Insurance, who was very confused to hear from a dead person. And one to Detective Noah Sinclair, who came highly recommended for catching cheating spouses. By Thursday, I had a plan that would make Preston's betrayal look like a preschool scheme. He wanted me dead? Fine. But the thing about the dead is that sometimes they come back. And when they do, they bring receipts, witnesses, and a vengeance that would make even the writers of the most dramatic soap operas take notes. If Preston wanted to play dead, I would show him what a real funeral looked like. His. Being dead was surprisingly productive. No meetings, no small talk, no pretending to care about Karen from accounting's keto journey. Just me, my laptop, and the meticulous documentation of my husband's spectacular betrayal from my sister's guest room turned command center. He updated his LinkedIn, Chloe announced on Wednesday morning, hunched over her MacBook like we were CIA agents tracking a terrorist. Who updates LinkedIn when they're grieving? I leaned in to look. Preston Keaton had indeed updated his professional profile with a somber black ribbon emoji and a heartfelt post about navigating profound personal loss while finding professional strength and purpose. It had 347 reactions of sympathy and 89 comments, including one from Haley saying, "Your resilience inspires us all. Here for you, always." Here for him always, I snorted. She's been here for him since she started bringing quinoa bowls to the office. Nothing says, "I want to replace your wife," like meal prep. The grossest part was seeing people from our shared social circle commenting with heart emojis and prayer hands, including Jessica Jess Lawson, my supposed best friend since college, who had sent me exactly 0 text messages to verify that I had, in fact, passed away. What kind of friend doesn't even call to make sure you're actually dead? I asked Chloe, who was refilling my wine glass with her fancy Oregon Pinot Noir. It was barely noon, but conventional drinking hours don't apply when you're legally deceased. "The kind who has been sleeping with your husband," Chloe said casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. I choked on my wine. "What? Oh, please. That whole business trip to Scottsdale last year? Jess was mysteriously at a conference the same weekend, and they came back with identical Southwest silver jewelry." The memory hit me like the energetic demands of a Peloton instructor asking for just one more effort. Preston had returned with a silver bracelet he claimed was from a local artisan market, while Jess had sported suspiciously similar earrings at our book club the following week. "That snake! I shared my charcuterie with her," I muttered, opening our security app to check the current state of affairs. Preston was in our bedroom, my bedroom, going through my clothes with Haley, who was holding my favorite cashmere sweater against her irritatingly toned body. "Is he giving away my clothes already?" My voice went up 3 octaves. "That cashmere was from the Nordstrom anniversary sale." "Turn up the volume," Chloe said, leaning in with the intensity of a suburban mom at a PTA meeting about controversial library books. "I don't think black is really your color," Haley was saying, tossing my sweater aside like it was from a discount bin. "But this might work for the funeral, appropriately somber, but still hot." "Take whatever you want," Preston replied, his voice dripping with the generosity of someone giving away things that aren't his. Mal would have wanted her things to be appreciated. "Oh, absolutely she would not have wanted that," I yelled at the screen. There is a specific kind of heartbreak that comes not from the betrayal itself, but from the realization that you were just an obstacle to be removed, recycled, and replaced. "She had good taste for some things," Haley continued, moving toward my jewelry box with the precision of a surgeon approaching a heart transplant. My actual heart pounded as she opened it, her perfectly manicured fingers hovering over my grandmother's pearl necklace. "But her style was a little mature for me," she added, snapping the box shut with a dismissive click that made me want to reach through the screen and rip that middle part right off her scalp. "You're 11 years younger and 2 dress sizes smaller. We get it," I muttered, taking another sip of wine. The doorbell rang on the screen. Preston looked momentarily panicked, like someone who had just remembered he was supposed to be mourning, not hosting a closet raid. "Probably another visitor," he said, straightening his deliberately wrinkled, grieving husband Oxford shirt. Wait here. He left, and Haley immediately lunged for my vanity, trying on my Tom Ford lipstick, the $58 one I bought as a birthday treat. She took a selfie and then started rummaging through my nightstand drawer. Oh my God, look in my nightstand! I told the screen as if Haley could hear my warnings. I dare you. She pulled out my journal, the leather-bound one where I had been documenting Preston's increasing disinterest in our marriage for the last 6 months. Her eyes went wide as she flipped through it, pausing on what I assumed were my detailed entries about suspecting he was having an affair. She quickly shoved it into her oversized tote bag just as Preston returned. Jackpot? Chloe whispered. She took my journal. That's theft, Chloe pointed out. That's evidence, I corrected with a grin that would have made my therapist very concerned about my mental state. Preston came back upstairs with Warren Griffin, the insurance investigator who looked exactly like his voice on the phone suggested, a basset hound in a JCPenney suit. Sorry to bother you at this difficult time, Mr. Keaton, Warren said, his tone suggesting this was his 4th visit to a grieving spouse that day. I just need to clarify a few details about your wife's passing. Haley stood awkwardly in the corner, trying to look like a supportive friend instead of someone who had just been rifling through a dead woman's possessions. This is Haley, my colleague, Preston introduced her with an unconvincing professional nod. She's been helping me manage during this difficult time. See, Warren's expression didn't change, but somehow his eyebrows conveyed that he had seen this scenario about 1,000 times in his 27 years at Regional Life Insurance. I see, he said, pulling out a form. Now, regarding the circumstances of Mrs. Keaton's death. Preston launched into the elaborate story he had concocted. A hiking accident in Vermont, a tragic fall, local authorities handling everything. His performance was worthy of a Razzie for Worst Actor in a straight-to-streaming drama. And the body? Warren asked, making a note. Cremated, Preston replied smoothly. It was what she would have wanted. How convenient, I told my phone screen. Cremated before anyone could verify I had a pulse. And you have the death certificate? Preston's confident facade cracked slightly. It's being processed. The Vermont authorities said it might take a few days due to the unusual circumstances. Warren nodded, writing something down that made Preston shift uncomfortably. We'll need that certificate, of course, along with the police report from the Vermont authorities. Of course, Preston nodded. Sweat was now visible on his forehead. Just waiting on the paperwork. While they continued talking, I texted Noah Sinclair, the private detective I had hired, insurance investigator at the house now. Preston claims VT authorities handling everything. Cremation, no death certificate yet. Noah's reply came instantly. Perfect. Vermont officials deny any reports of hiking accidents matching your description over the weekend. He's digging his own grave. I smiled, feeling the first genuine happiness since discovering my premature obituary. Speaking of graves, I typed back. Is everything set for the funeral on Saturday? All arranged, he replied. Griffin is on board too. Operation Resurrection is a go. Chloe looked over my shoulder at the text exchange. You know, most people would just file for divorce. I turned to my sister with the serene smile of someone who had transcended mere marital dissolution. Divorce is for the living, Chloe, and according to the Westchester Chronicle, I am very much dead. I raised my wine glass in a toast to the phone screen where Preston was now awkwardly ushering Warren to the door. But I promise you one thing. My resurrection is going to be to die for. By Thursday afternoon, my death had become the hottest topic in Westchester since the high school principal was caught selling homemade kombucha with suspicious alcohol content at the farmer's market. My inbox was overflowing with condolence emails from colleagues who apparently hadn't bothered to call my emergency contacts. The Hudson Valley Living Instagram posted a black square with my initials, the lazy person's equivalent of sending thoughts and prayers. Look at this, I told Chloe, showing her my phone. Cynthia from the art department wrote, Heaven gained an angel with the crying emoji. She literally called me Stalin editorial last month because I rejected her choice of cursive font. The death industrial complex in action, Chloe replied, handing me a fresh cup of coffee. Nothing like a colleague's demise to boost social media engagement. I was about to reply when a text from Detective Noah Sinclair lit up my phone. "Check your email. Found something interesting." The email contained a video attachment and a brief message. "Security footage from the Landing Hotel on Friday night. Your husband checked in as Frank Carson. Paid cash but used his actual credit card for room service." "Frank Carson?" Chloe raised an eyebrow. "That's the most generic alias in history. It's like calling yourself John Smith, but somehow even more boring." "It's from the protagonist of his unpublished detective novel," I explained. "The one he's been working on for 7 years that is still just an outline and 3 paragraphs." The video showed Preston and Haley entering the boutique hotel that was conveniently located 3 blocks from our house. Haley was carrying a weekender bag. My weekender bag, the Longchamp one I bought in Paris that Preston had claimed was stolen from the coat check at his company Christmas party. "That scumbag!" I yelled, more offended by this theft than the infidelity itself. "That is a $300 bag he said was stolen! I filed an insurance claim!" "Focus, Mal," Chloe said, rewinding the video. "Look what he's holding in his other hand." It was a thick manila folder with papers clearly labeled even in the grainy security footage. "Insurance?" "They were planning this," I whispered, feeling a weird combination of vindication and nausea. "The hotel meeting was the night before I left for Vermont, and the insurance policy kicked in the day after you died," Chloe added, connecting the dots faster than a Facebook algorithm tracking shopping habits. Noah's email included one more crucial detail. "Preston accessed your cloud storage last week and downloaded copies of your birth certificate, passport scan, and social security card." "Identity theft on top of the regular theft and fake death," I muttered, feeling my rage crystallize into something sharper and more focused. "He's going for the felony hat trick." "What's the plan now?" Chloe asked. I pulled out the notebook where I had been outlining Operation Resurrection with the same meticulous attention I usually reserved for the magazine's fall fashion issue. "Noah has secured video evidence of Preston and Haley's hotel meetup, plus the documentation on the insurance timing," I explained. "Warren Griffin is ready to accidentally arrive early at the funeral with his fraud investigation team. But we need more." I opened my laptop to show Chloe what I had discovered digging through our shared cloud drive. Something Preston apparently hadn't considered when planning my demise. "Preston has been embezzling from his company," I explained, showing spreadsheets and suspicious wire transfers. "He's been siphoning money from the marketing budget for months. Small amounts, but it adds up to nearly $50,000. "How did you figure that out?" Chloe looked impressed. "Remember when he insisted I help him organize his files last Christmas? I found discrepancies between declared expenses and actual receipts. I thought he was just terrible at bookkeeping, but now it's clear he's been building a getaway fund." I clicked on another folder. "And here is the pièce de résistance. He's been looking at properties in Costa Rica. Country with no extradition, beautiful beaches, perfect for a marketing executive with a stolen identity and his much younger girlfriend," Chloe whispered. "Damn, Mal, you're like Jessica Fletcher mixed with the Count of Monte Cristo." "Except I'm not waiting decades for my revenge," I replied, checking our security app again. Preston was in our home office, frantically searching through the filing cabinets. Haley stood at the door looking nervous. "I can't find the original policy," he was saying, throwing papers aside. "Warren wants to see it tomorrow." "Can't you just download another copy?" Haley suggested. "It has to be the original with the wet signatures," Preston snapped. "Otherwise, they'll delay the payout even longer." I smiled smugly, opening my tote bag to reveal the insurance policy in question, safely tucked in a folder. I had taken it from our files before leaving for Vermont. Not because I suspected anything, but because I had planned to review the coverage details during my trip. "Looking for this, honey?" I asked the screen, waving the document like a trophy. My phone rang, Noah Sinclair calling with an update. "I have news," he said without preamble. "Your husband just applied for an expedited passport in your name. He used the documents he downloaded from your cloud storage." "How is that possible?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Don't they need me in person?" "He claimed it was a replacement for a damaged passport. He filed everything online with your electronic signature, which he apparently had access to from your shared accounts." That is next-level identity theft, Chloe murmured, looking increasingly worried. It gets worse, Noah continued. I had my contact at the bank check your joint accounts. Preston emptied them yesterday, all $87,000. The room seemed to tilt slightly. This wasn't just an insurance scam anymore. Preston was preparing his complete disappearance with my identity and our money. The funeral is in 2 days, Noah reminded me. If we're going to catch him before he runs, that's our window. After hanging up, I turned to Chloe, my shock hardening into determination. We need to accelerate the plan. He's not just trying to cash in on my death. He's planning to vanish with everything. What do we do? Chloe asked. I pulled out the seating chart I had been designing for my funeral, because of course, I would want the perfect layout for my grand return from the dead. First, I need you to contact Preston's parents, I said. Tell them you've been trying to reach Preston about funeral arrangements, but he's not responding. Say you're worried about his mental state. Howard and Vivian? Chloe nodded. The ones who gave him that ridiculous world's best son coffee mug he keeps on his desk? The very same, I confirmed. They adore their precious boy and have no idea he's a sociopathic fraud. Let's make sure they have front row seats to his downfall. Next, I called Warren Griffin, who was surprisingly enthusiastic about catching Preston in the act. Apparently, insurance investigators lived for moments like these. Your husband has triggered every alarm in our fraud detection system, Warren explained. No death certificate, conflicting stories about where the death occurred, and an insurance policy that went active suspiciously close to the date of declared death. It's like insurance fraud bingo. And you're sure you can get a warrant by Saturday? I asked. It's already in process. We've coordinated with the local police. They'll arrive about 15 minutes after the service starts, right after your husband gives his eulogy. The final piece fell into place when Noah texted me confirming 2 crucial details. Preston had booked one-way tickets to San Jose, Costa Rica for Sunday morning under the names Frank and Haley Carson, and Haley had submitted her resignation at work effective immediately for personal reasons. I leaned back in Chloe's armchair, looking at the elaborate plan we had constructed. Part of me felt a pang of sadness at how thoroughly my marriage had disintegrated without me noticing. Another, larger part felt an almost electric anticipation for what would happen at the Riverside Community Center on Saturday afternoon. You know, Chloe said, studying my expression, most people who find out their spouse is cheating just key their car or cut holes in their clothes. I smoothed out the seating chart, placing Warren Griffin and the police detective strategically near the exit doors to block any potential escape attempts. Most people aren't declared dead by their husband while they're still very much alive, I replied with a smile that would have made a shark reconsider its life choices. Besides, I'm not just looking for revenge. I'm getting a story that will boost our magazine's readership by at least 30%. I picked up my phone to make one last call to Jessica Lawson, my alleged best friend who hadn't bothered to verify my death. Jess, it's Mal, I said when she answered, savoring her stunned silence. Yes, that Mal. Not as dead as advertised. Listen, I need you at my funeral on Saturday. Front row if you don't mind. Wear something nice. There will be a photographer. As I hung up, Chloe looked at me with newfound respect. Remind me never to cross you. Don't worry, I assured her, closing my laptop with a satisfying click. I save my best revenge for those who truly earn it, and Preston's performance at my funeral deserves nothing less than a standing ovation and handcuffs. The ending. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp, perfect early autumn weather usually reserved for wedding photo shoots and apple cider donut commercials. The irony wasn't lost on me. My fake funeral had better weather than my actual wedding day, which had featured a surprise squall that turned my cathedral veil into a wet rag. Are you sure about the dress? Chloe asked as she watched me in her full-length mirror. I had opted for a fitted black dress with a dramatic red blazer. Appropriate for a funeral with a touch of surprise, I'm not dead. Absolutely, I replied, applying another coat of what the Sephora salesgirl had called Revenge Red lipstick. Black for the occasion, red for the resurrection. Besides, Preston always hated this blazer, said it was too aggressive for the suburbs. Noah picked us up promptly at 1:30 in the afternoon, giving us time to arrive at the funeral right at the climax. His car, a discreet black sedan that screamed, "I follow cheating spouses for a living," was parked a block away to avoid alerting early guests who might recognize Chloe's vehicle. "Warren's team is in position," Noah informed us as we drove toward the Riverside Community Center. "He's stationed at the back entrance with 2 officers and a representative from Preston's company. They've been briefed on the embezzlement evidence." I glanced at my watch, a vintage Cartier that had belonged to my grandmother. "What's the timeline?" "Funeral starts at 2 p.m. Preston is scheduled to start his eulogy at 2:20. Warren's team will enter at 2:25, and you make your entrance at 2:30. The side door will be unlocked. I've got the photographer from the Westchester Chronicle there under the guise of covering the funeral of a beloved local editor." "Perfect." I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm for someone about to crash her own funeral. "And Preston's parents in the front row?" "Looking appropriately devastated," Noah confirmed. "I did a drive-by earlier. Howard is wearing a suit that's at least 2 sizes too big, and Vivian has enough tissues to supply a Kleenex factory." We parked in the back lot of the community center and slipped into Noah's surveillance position, a janitorial closet with a convenient view of the main hall through a vent grate. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered an excellent vantage point of Preston standing at the podium, looking the picture of grief in his charcoal suit. The turnout was impressive. At least 60 people filled the chairs. I saw my entire editorial team, several of Preston's colleagues, and most of our neighbors. Jessica was sitting stiffly in the front row next to Preston's parents, her face locked in the artificial pain expression she usually reserved for Instagram condolence posts. "Who is the blonde in the third row?" I whispered to Chloe. "The one dabbing her eyes but clearly checking her phone every 30 seconds? "Preston's ex from college," Chloe whispered back. "Emily something. She commented sending strength with a heart emoji on his Facebook post about your death. She sent a floral arrangement to our wedding with a card that said, 'You'll always be my first love.'" I remembered. Lovely of her to make time in her schedule for my demise. Preston adjusted the microphone, his performance as the grieving widower Oscar-worthy. His voice cracked at precisely the right moments as he spoke about our beautiful years together and how Mal would want us to celebrate her life, not mourn her death. "Rich coming from the man who drained our bank accounts," I muttered. Then came the kicker. Preston wiped his eyes with a handkerchief, my handkerchief, embroidered by my mother, and revealed his special guest. "I would like to thank Haley Bennett for her extraordinary support during this impossible time," he said, gesturing to Haley, who stood up from her seat in the second row. "Mal would be so grateful for your kindness." Haley had the audacity to wear a black dress that looked suspiciously like one from my closet, the Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress I had splurged on for last year's charity gala. "That's my DVF," I hissed. "Focus, Mal," Noah warned. "Warren's team is moving in." Right on cue. The back doors swung open. Warren Griffin entered, flanked by 2 police officers and a severe-looking woman in an impeccable pantsuit whom I recognized as Ellen Tate, the CFO of Preston's company. Preston faltered mid-sentence about my generous spirit, his eyes widening as Warren marched toward the front of the room. "Mr. Keaton," Warren announced, his voice booming across the stunned audience, "I need to speak with you about some troubling discrepancies in your insurance claim." Preston's face went on an impressive journey from fake grief to genuine panic in under 3 seconds. "This is not the time or place," he stammered, looking frantically for an escape route. "I'm afraid it is precisely the time," Warren replied, nodding to the officers, "especially considering the fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement charges we are investigating." A collective gasp swept through the funeral goers. Howard Keaton stood up, his oversized suit making him look like a child playing dress-up. "What is the meaning of this? My son is grieving." "Is he really?" I asked, making my entrance through the side door with timing that would make Broadway directors weep with envy. The room erupted in gasps. Jessica actually screamed. Preston's mother, Vivian, fainted sideways into Howard's arms, further rumpling his already ill-fitting suit. Preston's face drained of all color as he gripped the podium for support. "Mal, but you're dead." "Incinerated in Vermont after a tragic hiking accident," I supplied helpfully, walking slowly toward the front of the room. Which is strange, because I have been in Vermont, but hiking wasn't on the itinerary. Neither was dying. The photographer from the Westchester Chronicle was snapping away frantically, capturing Preston's look of pure horror as I approached. "You should see your face right now," I said, stopping right in front of the podium. "It's the face of someone who just realized he committed fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement for absolutely nothing." Haley tried to bolt for the exit, only to be intercepted by one of the police officers. "Not so fast," he said. "We have some questions about your involvement in the insurance fraud scheme." "I didn't know anything about it," she protested, clutching my DVF dress with white knuckles. "And I certainly didn't know about the embezzlement." Preston's head snapped toward her. "Haley, don't say another word." "Oh, please, let her speak," I encouraged, turning to the audience, who were sitting frozen in collective shock. "Maybe she'll mention the tickets to Costa Rica for tomorrow morning under the names Frank and Haley Carson. Very creative, Preston." The CFO of Preston's company stepped forward, her expression glacial. "Mr. Keaton, we have found evidence that you have siphoned approximately $50,000 from the marketing budget into your personal accounts over the last 8 months. "That's a lie," Preston spluttered, but his protests had all the conviction of a toddler denying he ate cookies while covered in chocolate. I pulled the insurance policy from my bag. "Looking for this?" I asked, waving it at Preston. "The original policy you've been tearing the house apart to find? The one you needed to complete your claim for my very premature death benefit?" Warren took the document, nodding appreciatively. "This completes our fraud investigation file quite nicely." Vivian Keaton had regained consciousness and was staring at me as if I had risen from the dead, which, from her perspective, was essentially true. "But the obituary," Preston said. Preston said a lot of things, I replied softly. Like that he had business trips to Scottsdale when he was actually taking Jessica Lawson there for romantic getaways. All eyes turned to Jessica, who looked like she wanted to melt into her beige, sensible heels. "It was just one time," she yelled, which was both a confession and obviously a lie. "And Emily," I continued, addressing Preston's college ex who was now frantically gathering her purse. "Those late-night work calls from Preston weren't about marketing strategies, were they?" Emily froze mid-stand, then slowly sank back into her chair. "Preston," Howard Keaton's voice trembled with disbelief. "What have you done?" "He faked my death to collect insurance money, drained our joint accounts of $87,000, planned to run away to Costa Rica with my identity and his intern, and has been systematically cheating on me with at least 3 women that I know of," I summarized politely. "Plus, he gave away my designer clothes without permission, which feels like a misdemeanor but still hurts." The officers moved toward Preston, who was now ashen-faced and sweating profusely. "Preston Keaton," the lead officer began, "you are under arrest for insurance fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and embezzlement." As they cuffed him, Preston finally found his voice. "Mal, you don't understand. We had problems. I was going to send you money back once I was settled." "Save it for your lawyer," I suggested as they escorted him and a sobbing Haley toward the exit. "Although I'd recommend one who specializes in multiple felonies rather than the guy who handled our wills." The funeral hall erupted into chaos as people processed what they had witnessed. Warren walked over with a satisfied grin. "Mrs. Keaton, that was the most efficient fraud bust I've seen in 27 years at Regional Life." "Happy to help," I replied. "Although I'd appreciate it if you dropped the Mrs. I don't think I'll be keeping the name." Chloe appeared at my side, handing me a glass of what was supposed to be funeral reception punch, but which she had clearly spiked from the emergency flask she kept in her purse. "Best funeral ever," she declared, clinking her plastic cup against mine. "Even if it technically wasn't yours after all." "Oh, but it was," I corrected, watching them stuff Preston into the back of a police cruiser. Standing there, watching him perform his grief, I realized I wasn't just burying a marriage. I was burying the version of myself that had tolerated his mediocrity for so long. It was the funeral of my marriage, Preston's career, and his freedom, all at once. Howard and Vivian approached cautiously, as if afraid I might actually be a ghost. "Mallory," Howard began, his voice cracking. "We had no idea." "Of course you didn't," I assured them, genuinely sympathetic to their shock. Preston was very convincing. He convinced me for 12 years, too. Vivian grabbed my hands, tears streaming down her face. What can we do? You can stop blaming yourselves, I told them, and maybe reconsider that world's best son mug. As the chaos subsided and the stunned attendees began to disperse, Noah walked over with news. The bank has frozen the accounts Preston emptied. You should be able to recover most of the money. That's good, I nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. Although somehow I don't think we'll be splitting assets 50-50 in the divorce. I'd say you have the upper hand in negotiations, Noah observed dryly. The reporter from the Westchester Chronicle approached, notebook in hand. Ms. Keaton, would you be willing to give a statement about what just happened? I looked around the funeral hall, the flowers bought for my non-existent funeral, the blown-up photo of me Preston had selected from our honeymoon when I still believed in happy endings, and the shocked faces of friends and colleagues processing the spectacular implosion they had just witnessed. Actually, I said, a smile spreading across my face, I think I'll write this story myself. 3 months after my spectacular resurrection, life had settled into a new normal that was anything but normal. My byline, Mallory Bennett, reclaiming my maiden name faster than Preston could say plea deal, now accompanied the most read column in Hudson Valley living history. Dead wife walking, when your spouse decides to kill you off. The first installment had crashed our website within hours of posting. Turns out, nothing boosts readership like a first-person account of attending your own funeral and watching your husband get hauled away in cuffs. I was sitting in my new apartment overlooking the Hudson River, sipping coffee from a mug Chloe had custom-made that read, Technically Immortal. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah Sinclair, who had transitioned from private investigator to something more personal in the wake of the Preston scandal. Court update. Preston denied bail again. I smiled into my coffee. Preston's legal situation had gone from bad to catastrophic when the financial investigation revealed he'd been embezzling from 3 previous employers, too. The prosecutor had used the phrase pattern of sophisticated fraud so many times during the preliminary hearing it could have been a drinking game. My buzzer rang. Chloe arriving for our weekly Sunday brunch tradition, carrying a box from the ridiculously expensive bakery she loved. You are going to die when you see what I found, she announced, dropping her purse on my counter. She paused, wincing at her choice of words. Sorry, poor phrasing. It's fine, I laughed. Death jokes are valid when you've been legally deceased. She pulled out her phone, showing me the latest video call from Preston in jail with Haley. I had never explicitly asked how Chloe got access to these recordings, and she had never offered the information. Some sisters share clothes. We shared surveillance footage. Watch his face when she tells him, Chloe instructed, hitting play. On the screen, Preston looked considerably less polished than the man who had once lectured me on the importance of keeping up appearances when I suggested wearing jeans to a neighborhood barbecue. His prison jumpsuit clashed spectacularly with his country club sensibilities. The lawyer says I might get immunity if I testify, Haley was saying, her perfect Gen Z skin now breaking out with stress pimples around her chin. About everything, Preston. The embezzlement, the insurance fraud, the identity theft. Preston's expression collapsed like a souffle in a slammed oven. You can't do that, Haley. We had a plan. Your plan got me in an orange jumpsuit for 2 weeks, she hissed, leaning into the camera. Do you know what happens to your skin in county jail? It's not like they provide drunk elephant moisturizer at the commissary. I couldn't help but laugh. Her priorities remained impeccable. Here comes the best part, Chloe said, skipping forward a bit. And one more thing, Haley continued on the screen, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. I sold the rights to my story for a book, The Other Woman, How I Almost Escaped with America's Dumbest Con Man. You did what? Preston's face contorted in horror. Netflix docuseries, Haley smirked. They're thinking 6 episodes. Don't worry, I used your good side in the photos I provided. The left one, where you don't have that weird thing on your ear. The call ended with Preston screaming Haley's name repeatedly as she signed off with a little finger wave. I almost feel sorry for him, I mused, picking up a chocolate croissant from the bakery box. Almost. Chloe raised an eyebrow. Almost in the same way you almost feel bad when a cartoon villain falls off a cliff after trying to drop an anvil on someone, I clarified. Theoretical sympathy that evaporates immediately when you remember the context. My phone dinged with an email notification. The final divorce decree had been processed. Despite Preston's current address being the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, the divorce proceedings had been surprisingly smooth. When your soon-to-be ex-husband is facing 15 to 20 years for multiple felonies involving your faked death, judges tend to be sympathetic to your property requests. It's official, I told Chloe, holding up my phone. I am officially unkeatoned. Cheers to your divorce from upstate New York's worst criminal mastermind, Chloe said, raising her coffee mug in a toast. Please, he wasn't even the worst criminal mastermind on our block, I corrected. Remember when the Henderson's kid tried to counterfeit $20 bills using green construction paper and a photocopier? At least Justin Henderson was 8, not 42 with a Stanford MBA, Chloe pointed out. I laughed but felt a familiar twinge of retrospective shame. How did I miss it, Chloe? 12 years of marriage and I had no idea I was living with someone capable of faking my death for insurance money. Because normal people don't expect their partners to be practicing amateur obituary writing in their spare time, Chloe replied. Hindsight makes fools of us all. Still, I sighed, scrolling through the divorce document. There were signs. The secret phone calls, the mysterious weekend conferences that never seemed to generate any email trails, the way he insisted we upgrade our life insurance right before my accident. You know what Preston's biggest mistake was? Chloe asked, licking chocolate off her fingers. Aside from the obvious felonies. What? Underestimating you, she said simply. He thought you were just another suburban wife who would be too overwhelmed by grief to notice discrepancies in his story. I nodded, thinking of the women who had reached out to me after my story broke. Other wives and girlfriends who had seen the red flags of infidelity and fraud but had doubted themselves into silence. My inbox had become a confessional for women who had been gaslit by partners, made to feel crazy for asking questions about missing money or unexplained absences. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Warren Griffin, holding a large envelope and looking considerably more cheerful than when we first spoke. Insurance check, he announced without preamble, handing me the envelope. Not the death benefit, obviously, but the fraud victim compensation, plus interest. I invited him in for coffee, which he accepted with the enthusiasm of someone whose daily routine involved more scammers than friends. So what happens with Preston's case now? I asked, pouring him a cup. He's trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA isn't feeling generous, Warren explained. 5 different counts across 3 jurisdictions, plus the attempted identity theft for the passport fraud. He'll be lucky to see the light of day before he qualifies for senior discounts. And Haley? Chloe asked. Sang faster than a trained canary, Warren said with professional admiration. Turned over everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'll likely get probation, maybe a few months in minimum security. She's already signed with a literary agent. Of course she has, I muttered. Probably using my stolen moleskin notebook to write the chapters. After Warren left, Chloe helped me hang the final touches in my new apartment. Framed covers of the magazine issues containing my Dead Wife column series. The latest one featured a stylized illustration of me rising like a phoenix from funeral flowers with the headline, Resurrection and Reinvention, Building a New Life After Being Declared Dead. Heard anything from Preston's parents? Chloe asked as we adjusted the frame. Howard calls every few weeks to apologize for raising a criminal genius without the genius part, I said. Vivian sends care packages with homemade cookies and self-help books with titles like When Bad Men Happen to Good Women and Healing from Marital Betrayal. That's weirdly sweet, Chloe observed. It is, I agreed. They're decent people who are mortified by their son's actions. I've assured them they aren't responsible for Preston's moral compass going haywire in middle age. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica Lawson. Her weekly attempt at reconciliation, which I continued to ignore with the serene patience of someone who had all the time in the world. Literally. When you've already died once on paper, you become remarkably selective about who gets access to your second life. The Hudson Valley Living Team had embraced my weird celebrity status, turning my personal catastrophe into our most successful editorial pivot in years. my editor's letter now closed with "very alive and thriving," which had become something of a personal mantra. That evening, Noah came over for dinner, bringing the case files for the book we were co-writing, Playing Dead: Inside the World of Faked Deaths and Insurance Fraud. It turned out my experience was surprisingly common, though usually resolved less dramatically. "Your case study is still my favorite," Noah admitted as we spread documents out on my dining table. "Most insurance scammers at least make sure their spouse is out of cell phone range before declaring them dead." "Preston always thought he was the smartest person in the room," I mused. That's usually a fatal flaw in both Greek tragedies and criminal enterprises. As Noah organized interview transcripts, I stepped out onto my small balcony overlooking the river, watching the sunset paint the water copper and gold. There was something poetic about having a view like this after years in a suburban house where the most exciting sight was the Johnsons' meticulous lawn care schedule in action. A year ago, I had been Mallory Keaton, comfortably married magazine editor, blissfully ignorant that my husband was plotting my demise on paper while embezzling from his company and sleeping with my friends. I had been living what I thought was a good life, never questioning the occasional inconsistencies or the convenient explanations. Now I had a new name, a new home, a successful column, a book deal, and perhaps most importantly, a finely tuned bullshit detector that would make airport security scanners look imprecise by comparison. Preston had tried to write my ending, publishing my obituary without consulting the main character of the story. His critical error wasn't just the fraud or the embezzlement or even the infidelity. It was assuming he controlled the narrative. But here's the thing about stories. They belong to the people living them, not the people trying to edit them without permission. Preston tried to reduce me to a plot device in his escape fantasy. Instead, he became a cautionary tale in mine. I raised my wine glass toward the setting sun, toasting to my own unexpected resurrection and the sweet justice of Preston's downfall. "To living well," I whispered to the horizon. "It really is the best revenge, especially when you can watch your aspiring murderer's mugshot go viral on Twitter." Somewhere in the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, Preston Keaton was eating mystery meatloaf in an orange jumpsuit, wondering how his perfect plan had crumbled so spectacularly. And I was here, very much alive, with a second chance at a first-class life. This story is a work of fiction, but let's call it a creative remix of everyday suburban horrors. Dignity isn't about never falling. It's about refusing to stay buried when someone tries to dig your grave. Sometimes you have to die, at least on paper, to learn how to truly live.